Welcome back to Biz Audio, everyone. What a day it has been in the radio world. Joining me is radio consultant Peter Samios. Welcome back, Peter.
Hello, Max. Thank you so much. And what a day indeed, because can we just all put a big disclaimer at the start of this podcast that the following survey results are essentially null and void. I
Exactly.
think there's been that many things that have changed in the industry in the last, what, 20 days or something like that. I think it goes without saying that Survey 2 2026 is going to look very different to Survey 1.
Absolutely. And look, the format of this podcast, we're going to go each market, and if we want, we can briefly touch on DAB. But in Sydney, starting off, of course, Kyle and Jackie O did not change at all. Now, I know you've had a few predictions with what's going to happen with Kiss Breakfast and two-day breakfast, but it's nice to see Today FM rising a tiny bit. I think zero point 0.7 people, 10 plus. And the breakfast slot, they had a zero point 0.7 rise as well. So that's nice to see for Today FM.
Yeah, keep in mind, now let's address the elephant in the room. Carl and Jackie O, their saga only started in the last week of the books. So
Yep.
it's very hard to tell that, did them not being on air, did the whole drama increase listeners or decrease? You cannot really tell with just that last little leg of it, with K&J not on the air. So you can't really say, oh, today's increase is because of the Carl and Jackie O saga. I don't think that's the reason. Let's remember what I said last time. The Today audience is very different to the Kiss 1065 audience. They're a lot
Absolutely.
younger. The music format is different. It's not the Today FM that was going head to head with Kiss 1065 when Carl and Jackie O first left Today FM and jumped over to ARN. So look, it is great to see the Today format. I'm actually a fan of it. I think it's ballsy, and the thing that I respect is what I think they're a year, maybe 2 years into this format. I can't quite remember.
Yeah, around
Surely
there,
it's about a year.
probably. Yeah.
It's great. The name Today to me means today's hits. So
Yeah.
it has to be a youth-based station. It can't be more music, more variety, 80s hits. I think that they've gone the right way with Today FM, and I love that they are staying committed to the cause. It does take a long time, and now I think Today will hopefully see in the coming surveys more growth because they stand for something different. I think now is the time that you really need to focus on what you do best and who you are. Do not try and copy what the previous number one station was doing, because listeners are jumping abroad and trialing every station left, right, and centre. But you are right. Yeah, great books today for Today FM. I think the other winners today worth noting is today's really in Sydney. I think it's an SCA's book. I think
Yeah.
they saw really good growth there. Triple M did well as well, and Smooth, an absolute powerhouse. I think
Absolutely.
they're really onto something, and that is a clear example of what I'm saying. Pick what you want to do what you want to do, and do it bloody good. And that's what Smooth does best. And a credit to Smooth as well. They've essentially reinvented themselves over the last 2 years or so, where they've gone to more of where the old WSFM and Mix 1065, that area there, they've moved away from, because they were a very contemporary 2CH easy listening type station. They've evolved. They're now the station for everybody. They're the at work station. They're the safe station. They're the safe option. If you have 10 people in the car and you can't agree on the station, you'll likely land on Smooth because it just caters for all, for all people. So well done to them. On to the losers, though.
Oh,
I think,
goodness.
yeah, I think the losers in this book, it's ARN. Now,
Absolutely.
I think you'd have to agree, Christian. Look, 20-year breakfast heritage in Sydney, ARN. I don't quite understand why they had to make that change. If they were going to really commit to the Christian O'Connell experiment in Sydney, I would have actually removed Jonesy and Amanda completely, or waited until Jonesy and Amanda's contract was up.
Yep. I
I
agree.
I can see why they've done it though, is that by keeping on, I heard the amazing Mike Burns say on a previous podcast with you, by keeping them in the same ecosystem, it stops listeners from jumping ship. If Jonesy and Amanda, and this is crediting Mike Byrne, I agree with what he said. If Jonesy and Amanda were on another station, then they'd be fighting against their own people. But the fact that the Jonesy and Amanda fans don't have anywhere else to go, it's either put up with Christian O'Connell or you've got Jonesy and Amanda in the afternoon. I don't think that's the last of the decline in the Christian books for Sydney for
I
Gold
agree. I
101.7.
agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to go down a bit more before they go up, and they will go up. Christian will find his niche. He will get, a lot of the Kyle and Jackie O refugees will probably trial him and come across. But it just doesn't make sense why you would keep Jonesy and Amanda there. You've confused your listeners because they still want that. But let's not forget the 101.7 listeners are rusted on listeners. One thing ARN does well is they've got diehard KJ show listeners and diehard WS or Gold 101.7 listeners that are very hard to move. So let's see where it goes with it. Kyle and Jackie O, they finish staying unchanged. So that's a nod to them doing that. Who knows where it'll go from here? Everyone's throwing figures out. I'm not going to say how much I feel Kiss will be hit from Kyle and Jackie O's departure, but I do clearly predict that the Kiss 106.5 breakfast slot will no longer be the number one FM breakfast show in Sydney, no matter who they replace it with. People only listen to the radio. We said this in a previous podcast. They only listen to the radio for Kyle and Jackie O. They will probably go to podcasts before they trial Nathan Emma or Ricky Lee and Tim. Um,
Absolutely.
and just on Ricky Lee and Tim, look, off to a good start, but it's at the cost of Fitzy and Whipper and Kate's drive figures. You can see they took a bit of a hit because it's such a good, Ricky Lee, Tim and Joel, a powerhouse. Putting them into breakfast, great. They've brought people across with them. That's great to see. But it is at the cost of drive. Now, I've heard a few places people saying that Fitzy, Whipper and Kate, they've got their energy back. The Fitzy and Whipper that we heard when they were in drive initially, they're starting to gain that momentum and they'll really make that show something great. It's just not there yet. So give it a while. I'm predicting that Fitzy, Whipper and Kate will finish the year strong, close to, if not the number one drive show in the country. That's my bold prediction for that program there, because Nova's traditionally always done really well in drive. So I think we'll see it there. But that's my assumption on my view on the Sydney market.
And just touching briefly going back to Gold 1017, all the day parts dropped except for Drive. I think that really is a testament to how strong Jonesy and Amanda are and how loyal their audience is.
Yeah, I'm going to be a bit of a pessimist here. Jonesy and Amanda have started unchanged,
Yeah,
but they're at a figure less than where they were when they were at Gold Breakfast.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I know the pie is probably smaller at Drive, but it's, a great team, great effort, amazing talent. But I think they would definitely be doing a lot better had they stayed in breakfast.
Yeah. And just touching briefly on a national level for Christian O'Connell, look, in Sydney, he did drop 74,000 in Cume. In Melbourne, they did gain 37,000, but they did end up losing that number one breakfast slot. In Brisbane on DAB, they're at about 2,000. Adelaide Gold DAB was about 4,000, and Perth was dropped a fair bit in 7,000. So look, those numbers in DAB are in the low thousands, but look, as of course, it does take time, and only time will tell. But look, over at Jonesy and Amanda as well, on a national drive in Perth, they did drop as well, and on DAB in Brisbane and Adelaide, they remained in small thousands. In Brisbane, they did actually quite well in drive, almost getting up to 10,000. But look, I think time will tell for the Gold Network.
Yeah, my view on, firstly, we'll go back to Christian.
Yeah.
Am I the only one who just thinks, you know what, it's not a national, if you're going to play the national card, well, okay, Mikey and Emma on The Edge, they were national because they were 96.1 in Sydney and they were on Edge Digital around the country. So, okay, you're not the first to build a truly national breakfast show. Mikey and Emma have already been there and done that.
Yeah.
My belief of the digital, using that as a reason to be national, it doesn't really sit well with me. I think,
I agree.
it's great that the product is amazing. I love what he's doing. But if he truly wants to say this is a truly national breakfast show we're building, well, then, mate, they need to be on terrestrial radio. They
I
need to be
agree.
AM or FM. to say we're really building something strong, and that only then will be something that's pioneering, to new levels in Australian radio. So, look, with Christian in Melbourne, I think he has been very clear and open about introducing the Sydney audience. I think it's too early to say, and I hope it's a trend. I hope this is just a bit of an anomaly. But I think with Sydney and Melbourne, we saw it when Kyle and Jackie O came into Melbourne. Doesn't work. We're seeing it when Christian goes into Sydney. Doesn't work. The difference, though, is Melbourne suffering because Christian is broadening his content to appeal to a more national audience? He may have to tone down the AFL talk and talk up a bit more. Oh, we've got new listeners north of the border. So I think that's taken a part there with Christian. In terms of Jonesy and Amanda and their results nationally, look, in Perth, don't forget in other markets, they didn't really know. They were tucked away in the 7 or 8 p.m. hour.
Exactly.
No one really knew who they are. So they are still relatively new to the audience.
Yes.
And, a station like Gold 96 FM, they, yes, they've had Will and Woody in the past, but mainly it's been a more music focused shift. And now all of a sudden you're introducing talk. And same with Gold in Sydney. So you've got those listeners that are used to hearing more music for the drive home. And now they've got, hey, you're lucky in Sydney, it's your favourite brekkie team now doing drive. But some people I only want Jones and Amanda for breakfast, and I just want more music at drive. So they're jumping elsewhere. And I think you can see Gold in Perth. I think that's the reason for that decline there.
And we're just going to touch briefly on Melbourne. Look, there weren't too many standout or any big results in Melbourne, except for one. I want to point out Nova 100 Breakfast with Jason Lauren. Absolutely leapfrogging Christian O'Connell, jumping up 2.3 to now sitting at 11.1 in breakfast. What do you think of that?
Look, firstly, hands down to Jason Lauren. In my view, they are number one in Melbourne. They really deserve to be in that number one spot. Mind you, Christian traditionally should keep the number one FM, but the effort that I see Jace, Lauren, and Clint put into their show, hands down, they deserve everything that they've gotten. What the pessimist in me again is saying, I hope that this is not just a one-off. Melbourne, look, they did it in the past when they went from Kiss to Nova 100. I think they did make the number one FM spot briefly, and then they started losing that momentum.
Yes.
So I really hope this time round they can really keep that there. Now, in terms of Melbourne, you look, how do you solve a problem like 101.1 FM? Whether it be Mix, whether it be Kiss, you've just got that problem that's 101.1. So let's see what ARN do here. I think we spoke last time. I think that they'll probably introduce that local brekkie show.
Yes.
Not too sure if that's going to have much of an impact. They really need to go down the path of let's disrupt the market. If I were programmers at ARN, I'd be taking a leaf out of Triple M Perth about being a real alternative. Now, I'm not saying to play all the different music formats and that, but just really think hard about, not just Triple M Perth, go back even further. The Nova Network originally, when they launched, they shook up the market because they stood for something that nobody had ever heard before. And given the way that the KISS network has gone lately with Adelaide and Brisbane changing formats, I think localism will be a big opportunity here for ARN. Don't just localize the Brekkie show, but localize and tweak the format on KISS 1011. And hopefully there we'll see some growth at that station.
And just briefly touching on one last thing before we move on to Brisbane. I know that Dave Cameron is starting to leave his mark in Melbourne because KISS 1011, now of course Gordy is usually networked from Sydney to Melbourne, but I know recently for the next few weeks they're going to have a local announcer, Kat Markey. I'm pretty sure she'll be covering for the next 3 to 4 weeks on workdays for KISS Melbourne, so that's nice to see that they're trying to localise it a bit more.
Yeah, don't get your hopes up. You know why that is. It's purely because Gordy, he's an amazing talent. I've got to say, I love listening to Gordy.
Oh, me
Gordy
too,
and
me
Michael
too.
Christian are
Yes.
brilliant announcers.
Yeah.
But look, one thing is KISS 1065 is doing their Easter show ticket giveaway. So they've done this in previous years when Sydney has to go all out on the Easter show. They put a local announcer on workdays in Brisbane. Obviously now they've got a permanent announcer there at workdays on 97.3, and same in Melbourne. So Don't think that'll last longer than that. But I am hopeful. You are right. I think with Dave Cameron at the helm, this could hopefully, just give them a give them a permanent gig there. I would love to see local work days at Kiss Melbourne and Kiss Sydney separate. And obviously, Kiss Brisbane have already got that, which we'll touch on shortly. Just one more thing about Melbourne. Well, I've never had the opportunity to talk about Melbourne's radio ratings until now publicly. I just want to put it out there to all the listeners. How do you solve a problem like 3MP and Magic 1278? I mean, it's hard enough. Every market has that one music station that's just a bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
But when you've got two of them
Oh,
on the AM
exactly. And the
dial,
same owner as well.
exactly, there's got to be more. We touched on this just a moment ago, but gaps in the market. There's got to be more opportunities. SEN, they found an opportunity, they filled it, and they own that niche. Isn't there another niche that could be filled on in some way? I mean, there's got to be something else other than just easy music and classic hits, and you're going up against each other, and they're potting along around the 1 to 2%. This is an opportunity to really, like I said with Kiss 1011, stand out for something, try something. I know you want to own that older audience, but really think deeper about what is it that they might want, and what's something that maybe Gold 104.3 is not doing right now, or that Triple M Melbourne isn't really serving right now, or even 3AW. Are they really catering for all things? Is there something that 3AMP and Magic could be doing to really make its mark in Melbourne?
And there's just two things I want to touch on in Brisbane, unless there's more you want to touch on. But look, two standouts for me. Well, standout in not a good way for Nova, but Kiss with Robin Kip and Corey's return. I think it shows that Brisbane did want them back because look, looking at the breakfast figures, they've jumped up to a 12.3 from a 10.2, but that's come at the cost of Nova Brisbane, by the looks of it, going down to a 9.3 single digits, the lowest they've been in a very long time. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I'm going to keep my lips tight on this about Nova's decline, because traditionally the Brisbane market, it's always been that race between Nova, Triple M, B105, and absolute credit to ARN here. This is the only shining light in ARN's books this time,
Yeah.
is Kiss 97.3. A credit to every single person in management who said, let's get that station local again. Let's get its music back on track. Let's get its Brecky show back on track. Let's get its work days back on track. I think that is truly something that they should be proud of there. With Kiss 97.3, I would suggest, though, they do just need to watch the Arvos where it does change formats and goes into a top 40. Now, a great example, you've got Loey coming from Kiss 97.3 at
Yeah.
nights. Could you believe Loey is there at the same studio, same station as Robin, Corey, and Kip? It's just they're polar opposites, and it's interesting to see that Loey was actually going to take their job. Um,
Yeah.
Loey's a great announcer. I just don't know if he's the right fit for that Kiss 97.3 format, or even the Kiss 102.3 format in Adelaide.
Yeah.
But definite winners in Brisbane is Kiss Brisbane. Well done to them. I hope they capitalise on it. I really hope this becomes the Brecky show that Brisbane rebuilt. They really need to just ride that wave long and hard, really go strong on the fact that we are here. And let's use this. Let's just take a minute here to just have a breather. All this anxiety that was building up between you and I and everyone in the industry about, oh my goodness, Loey's there. He's just holding. It's a holding pattern for when Kyle and Jackie O arrive. Well, now Kyle and Jackie O will not arrive at Kiss
Exactly.
97.3.
Exactly.
So congratulations to Robin, Corey, and Kip. Your jobs are not just safe for the interim. I think they're well and truly safe. You've come back with a bang. You've deserved every minute of it, and absolute credit, like I said, to ARN. It just goes to show, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly, exactly. And look, there's look, as we mentioned, Nova and Brisbane, but look, 4BC did drop a tiny bit, as well as looking over it. Yeah, Triple M did quite well actually. All across the day parts there were some rises there, but nothing else I really want to touch on in Brisbane.
Yeah, Brisbane to me is just, look, unless there's something else that pops up, like how 4BH has just come out from the packs, unless something like a 4BH success stories pops up again, It's really just a battle for a few percentage points. But there's some really strong performers in Brisbane, and well done to everyone there. The Nova thing, let's come back in a few books' time. I mean, I think it's a bit. They have shaken that breakfast show quite a bit,
Yeah.
but it still is a very strongly branded station in market, and I think they won't have an issue getting that audience back.
And over in Adelaide, I got to say, look, I think that ARN did have a good book here, not with Kiss, but with Cruise 1323. Now, ever since John Dean left Cruise 1323 last year, it had been going down and down and down because there weren't any real local announcers. Of course, Craig Huggins does the show from Melbourne, the Brecky show. But look, they've had a pretty good book here, up 2.5 to 8.8, people 10 plus. And in the Brecky for Cruise, they're up 1.1. But that's come at the cost for ARN of Kiss 1023's rebranded. And look, absolutely shocking results from Kiss 1023. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's the same goes. I think the thing ARN needs to take away from this book is that if it's if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like I said before, with Kiss 1023, okay, they've shaken it, they've kissified it. The rebrand, I think the rebrand, look, it's too early to say, but I hope it doesn't stick. The rebrand may have done more harm than good by shaking such a strong station like 1023 in Adelaide that you need to really hone in. I just don't see the point of the rebrand because you've essentially just got a new Brecky show, same music, just a new name. I mean, it kind of reminds me when I was in Dubbo when Star FM became Hit 93.5, and you're essentially saying to them, it's the same music, same announcers, we've just got a new rap over us.
Yep.
And I think that's what they really should have said is it's still your favorite station. It's still the hits you love. It's the hits you know. The dilemma is that they've relaunched the station, and look, Nova in Adelaide are probably sitting back having the last laugh here because the whole Ben and Liam saga, I think it would have played out differently had Ben and Liam been in market and been there at launch. It's very difficult and a huge challenge to do what Kiss 1023 have done without your star power there to launch it at Brecky. Having the Premier launch the station, yep, great. That was a great plan B, but they really needed the plan A. In terms of Cruise, originally, and still a part of me is just thinking, why on earth are they not just calling it Gold 1323? Just do it already. Just get it done with, move on with it. But do not do the gold playlist from the eastern states. You can see here clearly in the city of churches, they want music that you can hear in churches. They don't want the same music that you can hear coming out of 101.7 and 104.3. So I hope if they do ever do the Gold Adelaide on 13:23 a.m., I do hope they keep that music, keep that local strategy because they can see the success that's happened in Kiss Brisbane. If they tamper with the Cruise 13:23 format too much, then it's not a good thing. Let's not forget though, Cruise Adelaide, you've got announcers that aren't in market. You've got Huggo who's in Melbourne and Bilko who's doing it from the Sunshine Coast or something.
Yes,
So
that's right.
it really is on an oily rag, and they're doing better. I mean, in this one, they've outperformed 5AA, which has goodness knows how many announcers more than
Yeah.
what Cruise does there. So a credit to them, and it'll be interesting to see with the footy season back in the next survey. Because I know they do take some of the SEN calls just to see if that does have any impact on it. But look, Adelaide, it's definitely still Triple M's market, so well done to them.
And I just want to do confirm for anyone listening that it has been confirmed Gold 1323 will be coming in the next few months. Now, Sue Carter did confirm that the change will be happening, so that'll be interesting to see if they tamper with the music.
Will that be on AM or will that be DAB?
On AM, so it'll be Gold 1323.
Oh, well, there we go. Well, best of luck to them.
But switching over to Perth now, look, it's the first survey with Gold 96 FM. Now, big drops all around the board, and I don't know really, I don't know what to blame that on. The good name change could play a part, but I don't think they changed the music up too much. What do you think about Gold 96 FM?
Yeah, the difference with Gold's rebrand and the Kiss rebrand is people essentially knew when they see the Kiss name, they know exactly what's going to happen. Oh God, you're turning into a CHR station. Oh, it's top 40. My variety. Where's my variety? You look at their Facebook comments. Everyone was complaining about is the variety going to go from Mix 1023? Whereas with Gold 96 FM, if I listened on launch day, and they still heavily emphasize the 96 FM. It reminded me of when Today FM became Hit 1041 Today FM.
Yeah.
It's like, hang on, did I just hear a hit? A hit? What was that? So the listeners are probably thinking, I don't think that makes much of a difference whether you put a gold there. It could be pure gold, it could be the type of music they play. I don't think that has had an impact in Perth. Perth has always been that, in the last 2 years or so since Triple M have really started to take shape, it's been bouncing around a bit, especially since Mix 94.5 has, when they had 100 surveys at number one and then fell off the wagon there. It's always bounced around a bit. It's a clear thing that no matter what happens in Perth this day and age, Nova 93.7 is always going to be taken out on top. So, well done to them. And I think we've got to also give special mention to 6PR in Perth. They've made a few
Oh,
programming
exactly. Yeah,
changes of
nine
late.
nine finally had some good results in Perth.
Yeah, and look, I put that down to them getting their day parts right. They had those extended shifts trying to cut costs, having, really long, well, not really long, another hour or two per show. But that market, they just want to hear the brekkie guys, the morning announcer, the afternoon show, the drive show. They don't want to have these extended programs. So it's a credit to them there. But yeah, look, I really think Perth is always going to just bounce around the place, but Nova will always be taking it out on top. And can I just say in Perth, their breakfast show on Nova, they've been minus an announcer, having Joel Creasy fill in. It doesn't really matter if it's permanent or if that announcer drops off. I can't, pardon me, is it Nathan or is it Nat who's,
Nat.
oh, sorry, Nat who's missing. I think, yeah. So I think that doesn't really play a part in their results. Nova Perth are still strong performers, even if you do take that announcer out and put a Joel Creasy in or put someone else in. I mean, they've really held themselves. So similar to Brisbane, I think the Nova brand is strong enough to hold on its own.
Now, look, that's all five markets. Was there anything you wanted to briefly touch on in DAB? Now, I know that there was a lot of that in Perth, especially. There was a launch of Kiss Perth, which didn't do as strongly as I think ARN would have liked. But look, Cater has stayed very much similar to, and look, even the gold DABs, they've stayed very much the same. So, is there anything on DAB you wanted to touch on?
Yeah, look, as Mike Goldman told me, DAB dead and buried. The problem with the digital radio, in my opinion, is they really needed to roll, or they still can. The government needs to do what they did with digital television, set an end date for analog and say, this is it, you need digital radios by this date. Until that day comes, and that will never come because someone in Parliament's always going to say, what about our hospitals? What about our roads? No one wants to roll out digital radio around the country,
Yeah.
but they really need to look into that at some point in the future. Otherwise, digital radio is always just going to hum along the way it's been. Now, my view on digital, looking at the results today, well done to Cater. I think they've made a real niche nationally. It's a shame that there's not as much resources. I heard you say in one of your podcasts going into that as what they did when they launched with a bang. It'd be good
Yeah.
if that could, we could see some change there. But well done to them, and also well done to Heart, to SEA as well. It's their first book with the Heart network there, and they've made quite an impact as well. So some good figures there with digital. Like I said, if you're going to play the national brekkie show on digital, well, hang on a minute, weren't Kyle and Jackie O also doing Kiss Perth digital as well?
Oh yeah,
Are
let
they?
me just get those numbers up actually. For Kiss
Because that
Perth
means
breakfast.
they're a national show as well. So look, it's great that Christian's pioneering it, but there are others that are trying to steal some of that thunder as well. And please, I'm not creating a war against Christian's program. I just think, if you're going to be national, it really does have to be, and it's inevitable. My prediction is Gold 96 FM will eventually drop the FM and be Gold 96 to bring them in line with everyone else, maybe even Gold 96.1. And then I believe Christian will take on that breakfast show. I think the current Gold Brekkie team, look, unless Jonesy and Amanda pick up in Perth, they might be delegated to a local Perth Brekkie, local Perth drive show on Gold,
Yeah.
with Lisa and Russell there. So I don't know what's going to happen in Perth, but there's definitely I feel that there's going to be some movements happening. But my soft spot in Perth, I think I'd love to see Triple M do well. I really love that station. Nationally, I think they've really they own that idea of we have a niche and we're going to go ahead with that. So yeah,
Exactly.
look, that's my wrap on it all. And digital radio, let's sit back and see what happens with the Heart Network. And if the Heart Network takes off and is the next big thing, well, maybe we will see, Heart 104.1 Sydney come at some point in time.
And I've just got the Carl and Jackie O numbers for Kiss Perth Breakfast. The Cume is at about 1,000, so not much of an impact there at all.
Okay. I don't know how that'll go down with Kyle, but he's probably got a few other things to look after before
Exactly, yeah. Bit, bit,
worrying about the
bit
Kiss Perth
preoccupied at the
TAB.
moment. Well,
Yeah.
look, I wanted to also get your opinion on one last thing before we wrap up. In Sydney, now 2SM has hasn't been in the ratings for a very, very long time, but I've seen a lot of talk recently about what if 2SM re-emerged into the Sydney market. Do you think that that would be a good idea, and what do you think the market share would be around?
I'm biased because I love 2SM. I worked there on 2 occasions. I always vouch for, I think the people that badmouth that network, they might have left on sour terms. Who knows? There's other parts of the story. I had a blast there. I had one of the best times in the radio industry working at 2SM Sydney. I will always would love for it to become that powerhouse again. If anyone, look, it just needs some strong marketing behind it because Tim Webster he's a very experienced announcer. Chris Smith, yep, he's been through his past, but he's owned his past and he's really carved out a niche. And I believe that that is why Mark Levy's not pulling the figures that he's pulling because you know Chris Smith is luring some of his old 2GB listeners back across, but only those who know that 2SM still exists. So I think with the right marketing, they really could be a good station. And look, Brent Bultitude, he's actually a really good listener in the afternoon. Yes, he comes from Newcastle, but in terms to answer your question of where I think they would be sitting, look, they did do a Campbelltown survey, was it last year or the year before?
Yeah.
C91.3 did a survey and they actually included 2SM in those books, which everyone nearly fell off their chairs. My God, we can see a rough idea of where 2SM would, sample size of where 2SM could be sitting in the Sydney market. Sadly, it wasn't performing too well. I think John Laws, he was sort of around 2000 or so. I can't remember the exact figure. I probably could be misquoted there, but it wasn't doing phenomenally well there. So if it was to roll out in a Sydney, on a bigger scale, who knows? I really feel that they could, they would definitely have to be ahead of 2UE in
Oh yeah.
terms of listeners, So I don't think they'd be the absolute powerhouse purely because the product is getting a lot better. A credit to the current management. I think they're doing a phenomenal job at 2SM. They've got the digital presence there with their websites being redone. They've got, a really good lineup in the mornings, especially. Tim Webster and Chris Smith, they just really need to, it's all comes down to the bottom line. If they've got the funds, just go hard with the marketing because they need to be, as I've said to other in previous podcasts, they need to be the Pepsi to the Coke.
Yeah,
They need to
exactly.
be the what the 2UE was to the 2GB. 2UE was still able to pull a 7-figure or 6-figure even when they were both a talk station up against 2GB before they were owned by the same network. So I think that can really carve out. I believe Sydney is a big enough market to have 2 commercial talk stations and still have the ABC.
And I've just got the
People,
numbers.
yeah.
Sorry, go on. Sorry.
No, that's it. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I've just got the numbers up from 2SM in the Campbelltown survey. I think this was survey 1 2023. Yeah, it looks like John Laws's morning show was at about at 1,200. So, yeah, not the numbers that I was looking to see there, but at a 10 plus, it looks like they're at about 3,200 in Campbelltown area.
Yeah, and that's look, you can't you can't take that as any kind of measurement of anything. You can't look at some people used to look at the Newcastle survey and go, oh, if Laws is pulling that in Newcastle, and if Knights are pulling that in Newcastle, and Talking Sport was pulling that in Newcastle, and then that's a sample size of Sydney. You just can't do it that way. You
Exactly.
won't know until they return. And yeah, I don't see them returning this year, unfortunately. As much as I'd love them to. I just think there's a bit more of the back end that needs to get into it. And like I said, they are doing, Despino and George have done a phenomenal job getting the right people into the right roles. And I believe, I'm hoping that there's a lot happening behind the scenes that we'll see unfold in 2026 with that station because it's it's such a powerhouse. People don't know it's still there, but it is. It has such potential. I've always loved 2SM, and I would love to see it come back and really shake stuff up in Sydney.
Well, thank you so much for all the opinions and all the breakdown of the ratings, Peter. It was great to have you back on as our little what do we call it? Guest contributor, or what do they call it?
Just the hijacker of your program. I'll just come in every now and again and just completely hijack the microphone and let it be the Peter show. And, you know, but no, it's been great. Thank you, Max. I
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
And it has been a very momentous day as well. Sadly, we will not see another survey like this on Sydney FM Breakfast Radio. And I do believe that from here on, it's game on for all stations. So I can see Nova Sydney pick up quite a few listeners from this. I hope Christian makes his mark. I really hope today really start to grow as well. But now it's game on. You know, there's no longer that, oh, okay, Kyle and Jackie O and Ben Fordham are going to take all the share. It's on for everyone. So let's see. If I was the marketing teams and the programming teams, I would hopefully be launching things tomorrow, if not today. Now's the time to really get aggressive, and it's a real exciting time as a radio nut to sit back and just watch it all unfold. And most importantly, we're all sitting on edge to see what's happening, no pun intended, to see what's happening with Mike E and Kiss 1065 breakfast. So
And
let's see what happens there.
and hey, look, by the next few surveys, we could see Heart 1041 with Jackie O on breakfast. I'm just throwing that out there.
Look, I stand by it. I think they've definitely got. I don't know what Kyle's plans are, but I've said it loud and proud. I think it will be Jackie O. She'll rebrand as Jackie Henderson, and she will be on 104.1 FM breakfast, whatever you call it. But I believe that she is strong enough to deliver a show on her own. I believe that she will be in talks with them there. You've got Kath O'Connor there. You've got Gemma Fordham, who's friends with Kath. Gemma's Jackie's manager. I mean, great friends as well, regardless of what Gemma's been going through. I believe they could pull a few strings there, and I would love to see Jackie pop up there. And as you mentioned in your most recent podcast, what I said, that if that Jackie goes there, well, where does Emma Chow go? Now, she could obviously jump back in with Mikey, and I think Mikey would be a stellar replacement for Kyle on Kiss. So I'm hoping to see that announcement happen soon. Not about Emma joining Mikey again, but about Mikey being spearheading Kiss 1065 breakfast. I think he is perfect to carry on that type of program that deserves to be on 1065.
Well, thank you so much. We'll chat to you on survey 2.
Amazing. Looking forward to it. Watch this unfold. Get the popcorn ready.